which was the thing I kept proposing in the first place.
I can take some. Do you want
No, I'm fine. No, I need to get some more.
Yeah.
Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share a part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Through the gifts of technology, we also gather virtually to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Welcome to all those who are joining us in this way today. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls, all arise.
Good morning. I'm David Yackel, a member of All Souls. We are glad that you are here with us today, whether you are joining us online or here in person. Now we have the pleasure of recognizing those visiting us for the first time. If you are a visitor here, please either stand or raise your hand. Our ushers have a gift for you, and so please keep your hand raised or standing until they have delivered that to you. We want you to know that you are welcome here with all of the identities you hold and all in your fullness as a person. We hope that you will bring your whole self to this time together.
Again, good morning and welcome. We come together this morning once again, here in this covenant community of memory and promise, seeking not only to overcome our personal isolation in the bonds of friendship and mutual care, but also to nurture our growth into effective moral leaders who can help bring about the healing of our neighborhoods and our nation. We remind ourselves that justice is not an inherent quality of the material universe. It is rather an act of human imagination, an aspiration of how we might order our lives together, of how we might be with each other. Justice comes to life in the narrative of our history. Without a story to tell, there is no foundation on which to build the beloved community within the kingdom of righteousness. At this moment in the calendar of the year, we look ahead to the celebrations of a people's liberation on the anniversary of Juneteenth 2 weeks hence, and we recall with repentance the horrific events of the race massacre in the Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, Oklahoma, a century ago. Today we consider the power of tradition to shape us, to bear witness to the claims of justice upon us, to summon us out of the dead hand of guilt and habit, to heal, to redeem, to restore right relationship, to imagine again the community of justice, compassion, and peace. 50 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. invited us to dream of a land where black and white might live together in equality and freedom. Today we affirm that this dream lives on, that we are its heirs and its executors, that the story continues in us, in the power of our witness, our vision, and our leadership. Today, we welcome the newest members who have chosen to join with us in making these shared dreams foundational to their own spiritual growth and practice, so that together we might all renew the aspiration that our lives shall be worthy of such a hope. And we kindle once again the chalice flame that is a symbol of our free faith, so that it might illuminate our minds and hearts and enlighten our world.
Oh, sorry. Good morning. I'm Ginny, and I light this chalice for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
And if you would stand as you are willing and able for our song, Gather the Spirit.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love and conscience refined. With body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit, growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Oh, that's all we have. All right, well, we have at this moment the opportunity to formally welcome into membership those who have joined the All Souls congregation in the past several months. And so I would invite you to come forward when Angie calls your name to sign the membership book and receive your welcome, and to speak together the words of our new members' covenant, which will be on the screen for you.
Hi everyone, can you see me? They don't have the step here, so you're gonna bear with. Before I get to that, I want to do one little thing. I want to take a video of everybody waving. Okay? Is everybody okay with that? All right, here we go. Start waving. Yes! Awesome! This is great. You know what this is for, don't you? Yeah. Are you tired already? Come on. All right, that's great. Thank you so much for humoring me on that. There, now. Now you can see me. I am so happy to introduce 5 of the 10 new members that we have this go around. 5 of them will hopefully come back in November, so I'm going to read off the ones who couldn't make it today first. They are Jack Mead, who is one of our new members' boyfriend, who is going to be up here today. Gina Pease Margiela, Sarah Dixon, Brian Golka and his wife Madeline Burkemper, and Gregory Taylor. So look out for them and say hello. And Brian and Madeline, I know, have a young child who also comes with them too. All right, now on for the show. All right, Julia Austin, come on down and sign the book. Julia. and sign your membership card too. Julia is like a dictionary in a near constant state of change and adaptations. She has a great love for all of the arts and has been a mentor and an advocate in the disability community for limb differences. Her Kansas City dream, I think like most of us can respond to this, is to be locked inside of Andre's and left to her own devices or desires. I'll join you. Willow Chrisoven. Morning is Willow's favorite time of day because there's no pressure to do anything, and breakfast is amazing. She loves food, cooking, baking, and trying different restaurants. Her favorite breakfast place is in Columbus Park, Happy Gillis. So if you want to take her for breakfast, you know where to go. Glenn Higley. Glenn recently retired from a lifetime of work in libraries. He enjoys jazz, folk, and classical music, as well as British films, television, and travel. He looks forward to participating in the All Souls community. Afra Maria Caraya. This is a short description as she could manage of Afra Maria, woman, student, and witch in abstract. Belief is like a fine wine, and lately she hardly sips. Her tendency is nihilist. She is a woman who preferred to be possessed of her own free feeling in the dark than false truth in the light. She does believe, however, in some things, in herself, with all of her melancholia and flaws, in the spirits, mundane and magical, in the erotic embrace of pale ashen moonlight, sometimes. She believes in other people or even things like love, sometimes. Maybe that belief in love and people is why she chose to make covenant here. Maybe. And finally, but definitely not least, is Duke. Duke Porter. Duke is a lifelong student who loves seeking new knowledge both inside and outside the classroom. They enjoy playing games with friends as well as spending time with their loving boyfriend, the aforementioned Jack Mead. They love supporting art in various forms, such as reading dystopian and post-apocalyptic fiction. They are a believer in affording all humans the rights of equal and exceptional standards of living, care, and kind communities, and a network of love and support to pursue everyone's dreams. Welcome.
Do we have the new member covenant? Okay, I'm going to invite our newly received members to join together in the words that are going to appear on the screen back there. This is now my religious community. It is composed of people both like me and different. Together, we make it what it is. I want this community to be a source of light and wholeness. It will be if I am. It will make generous gifts if I'm a generous giver. It will be a friendly and welcoming place if I remember to reach out. It will be a responsible steward of resources if I participate responsibly in it. It will share beauty and challenging thought with other people if I invite them. It will be a community of fearlessness and faith, of loyalty and love, if I, who make it what it is, am filled with these. As I become a member of this congregation, I dedicate myself to the task of becoming all the things I want my church to be. May it be so. And now I invite us to greet our new members as a whole congregation by speaking once more the words of our covenant promise to one another. Yes. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. All right. Thank you for being here today, and once again, welcome. You can be seated. Anna? Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Will you please join me in singing our children to their classes?
Go now in peace, may love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessing of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds. Faith to follow where the human spirit leads.
I get to be super tall. Good morning. I'm Anna Sajovic and an All Souls member since I was inducted in 1991. In addition to currently coordinating the Greeters and New Member Mentor Program, I assist in the Visual Arts Committee and volunteer at the front desk monthly. I am also honored to serve on the Board of Trustees and co-chair the new All Souls Justice Action Network. But of equal import, my husband Chuck and I put a portion of our financial resources toward the All Souls mission by being annual pledging members, making automatic monthly contributions toward this church that we value so deeply. At this point in the service, we have a weekly opportunity to give money toward the many programs and unique community All Souls provides for us. Every time we contribute our dollars to the All Souls general budget, we help to fund staff, justice and educational programs, our building's facilities, and the ever-changing, much-needed technology that connects us to new and existing members. Everything that keeps us going as a church. Moreover, we are sharing our gratitude for the inspiration that All Souls is to so many of us, finding our own individual spiritual paths and surviving the challenges of everyday life. I, like many of you, find peace and comfort knowing that All Souls is always there for me as a respite and as a source of energy. I am truly grateful for all that my involvement at church brings me, and I believe All Souls deserves our support. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in, welcome into open arms. Every soul and every story, here you'll find community. Oh, welcome, open arms. Welcome into open hearts. Bring your joys and any sorrow. Here is love and sympathy. Oh, welcome, open hearts. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in, welcome into open minds. Bring your questions, all your searching. Here you'll make discoveries. Oh, welcome, open minds. Welcome into open arms. Every soul and every story. Here you'll find community. Oh, welcome, open arms. Welcome, welcome, welcome in.
Will you now join me for the dedication of the offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Just so that you don't think I have taken a dive into the deep end of frivolity and abandoned all pretense of intellectual seriousness, let me begin with Theodore Parker, one of the founders of American Unitarianism. In 1841, Parker preached at the ordination of a junior colleague a sermon entitled "The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity," in which he made two claims. The first was that essential Christianity, to the extent that it represented real moral and spiritual truth, could not and did not change. If what Jesus had once said was true to begin with, and his hearers took this as a given, then it remained true throughout the centuries, no matter what anybody else said or did about it. The second claim was an historical observation, apparent to anyone with any claim to intellectual credibility, which was that the philosophical doctrines and the ritual practices of Christianity had changed and varied considerably over time and across space. As Parker put it, men are burned for professing in one age what other men were burned for denying in previous ages. He challenged his hearers to acknowledge that their own personally beloved interpretations and practices would eventually become part of that succession of discarded artifacts of Christianity, and not to identify those historical accidents with the unchanging heart of Jesus' message. Parker was arguing for a progressive view of religion in the literal sense of that word, the expectation that there could and would be progress in the human understanding of spiritual truth, even if that truth itself was eternal. His sermon is required reading for all serious students of UU theology, and his thesis has become one of the a priori propositions of our movement. We take it so much for granted that we don't even feel a need to spell it out as part of our 7 principles, which is why I feel that it ought to be pointed out to our newest members. We expect that what we know as religion to evolve, both in the shared history of culture and in our personal spiritual journeys. This is such a commonplace for liberals that it had never occurred to me consciously to question or examine it. I really don't think I could have articulated an alternative until I read about Michael Pollan's adventures with barbecue. You have to start with the recognition that the definition of what constitutes barbecue is hotly contested among the ranks of regional devotees to particular traditions of styles of preparation, types of sauce, and even the appropriate cuts of meat and type of animal. Some would argue that lamb barbecue is a contradiction in terms. Others would retort that it is delicious. Pitmaster Ed Mitchell is adamant that only the cooking of the entire pig as one entity, the whole hog as the locution has it, actually counts as barbecue. Is it legitimate to use a gas-fed heat source? Is barbecue sauce merely the disguise for an inept cooking process, or does it properly contain vinegar only, or tomatoes, or mustard? Each of these suggestions is gospel to one faction and heresy to another. One of the things I first learned about living in Kansas City is that I'm expected to sign up for Team Jack Stack or Gates or Arthur Bryant or Joe's. It's not that I can't eat at or enjoy all of them, which I do, but I am supposed to be able to weigh in on the question of which one represents authentic Kansas City barbecue. As the high priest of Southern cooking, the pitmasters will say condescendingly of traditions at variance with their own, "It may be tasty, but it ain't barbecue." They have an agenda, those pitmasters. They are fierce in the defense of something that, while they own it, is not their own. The barbecue that they produce is both an immediate food experience and something else as well, an inheritance, a cultural tradition, a harking back to some memory of primal origin that lives on in the authenticity of the meal that people eat today. As Michael Pollan points out, the cooking of a whole large game animal is of necessity a communal event. This is food that must be distributed by some means, either festal or commercial. So the question of whether a rack of ribs or a beef brisket can rightly be said to constitute barbecue goes beyond mere taste to evoke a social and even moral universe which is implicit in that definition. The food that may be tasty but it ain't barbecue does not carry that freight of collective memory, the resonance of what this particular stuff has meant to this particular community over time. The priests of the barbecue pit have taken it upon themselves, as their predecessors did, to preserve that connection to the past with its subtle layers of meaning through their fidelity to a tradition of cooking. No doubt there will be innovations in what and how people eat. That is not their concern. Their task is to hand on unchanged to their own and future generations this specific experience, as evocative as Marcel Proust's Madeleine, though far more earthed, robust, and primal. Their quest, says Pollan of the pitmen he interviewed, is not for creativity, but for faithfulness. And that takes me back to Theodore Parker and leads me to ponder this question: is there anything in Unitarian Universalism that might call us to that kind of faithfulness? Is there any flavor of religious experience that deserves to be handed on so that future generations might taste what their predecessors tasted, and by that sensation become rooted and sustained in a tradition that is something more than their own invention? But before you come with too glib an answer to this question, turn it another way. Is there any aspect of our tradition, any part of our culture as left-wing Protestant intellectual reformers and free thinkers that you cherish enough to want to preserve it and bequeath it, so that you would say of its alternative, it may be tasty, but it ain't Unitarian Universalism? Parker's right, of course. He was then and he is now. What is true of the human condition in its relationship to the forces of universal creativity is something we all share, and its truths are never captured by any of the metaphors or narratives or philosophical systems we use to point to it and talk about it. Indeed, we have moved beyond Parker's own historical horizon to say now that the vocabulary of Christianity and Jesus' teaching itself is a transient reflection of the eternal truth of which he spoke. I shall have more to say about this analogy in a few moments. Meanwhile, let's hear a little more of Pollan's account of what he came to understand about the heritage of barbecue.
The Spanish conquistador Hernando de Soto brought the first pigs to the American South in the 16th century. For hundreds of years, the descendants of these hogs ranged freely in the Carolinas, feeding themselves on the abundant mast produced by the oak and hickory forests. This means that at least until the pigs were confined to farms, the flavors of the eastern hardwood forest could find their way into the pork by two routes. First as acorns and hickory nuts, and then as wood smoke. These feral hogs were hunted as needed or rounded up in the fall by the porcine equivalent of cowboys. Hogs were so abundant that even slaves could enjoy them from time to time. And because a single animal yielded so much meat, to cook a pig in the South has always implied a special occasion, a gathering of the community. The practice of grilling whole pigs over wood fires came to the American South with the slaves, many of whom passed through the Caribbean, where they observed Indians cooking whole animals, split and splayed out, and on top of green branches stretched over fire pits. Along with this technique, which the Indians called barbacoa, or at least that's how it sounded to the African and European ears, the slaves brought with them the island seeds of the red chili pepper, which became a key ingredient of barbecue seasoning. In the Carolinas, the tradition of whole hog barbecue has long been bound up with the rhythms of the tobacco harvest, which enlisted the entire community for a few crucial weeks every fall. After the men hauled the tobacco into the curing sheds, the women sorted and pulled the big leaves on frames, and oak wood fires were burned through the night to slowly dry them. Retrieving the hot coals produced by these fires and shoveling them into a pit to barbecue a whole hog became an autumn tradition, a way to celebrate the completion of the harvest and to thank the workers for their labors. The patient rhythms of hanging and curing tobacco meshed neatly with the rhythms of slow cooking a pig over wood coals. I met black pitmasters in North Carolina whose own childhood reminiscences of barbecue are tightly braided with memories of bringing in the tobacco in the fall. One of the rare occasions when blacks and whites worked and feasted side by side.
Though barbecue is largely an African American contribution to American culture, it has always been equally prized by white Southerners, most of whom will freely acknowledge that the best pitmen have always been black and were called pit boys until uncomfortably recently. A white-owned establishment with a black pitman out back is not atypical. But good barbecue has always been one subject on which black and white Southerners could agree. Even during the darkest days of segregation, blacks and whites patronized the same barbecue joints, despite the fact that prior to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, they could not eat their barbecue in the same dining room. If the best barbecue in town happened to be at a black establishment, whites would line up at the takeout window. If it happened to be at a white joint, then blacks would line up at the window. Nowadays, barbecue restaurants are, in the words of John Shelton Reed and Dale Volberg Reed, the preeminent historians of North Carolina barbecue, quote, a good deal more integrated than most other places of worship, unquote. According to its exponents, barbecue seems to exist outside the normal American racial paradigm. African-American pitmaster Ed Mitchell of Durham, North Carolina, says that the two most integrated experiences in his life, the places where race divisions actually broke down, were serving in the military in Vietnam and the culture of barbecue. Barbecue and Vietnam transcended race in his experience in a way that nothing else had ever done. It's a large weight of significance for any one plate of food to bear, it is true. But there it all was, the beloved pig, the smoky traces of the local forest, the desultory rhythms of Southern life and labor, and the knotted strands of race. All that, and probably more I didn't know, seasoning this delicious and most democratic sandwich, one that just about anybody could afford. We got barbecue, slaw, and cornbread, that's all, the servers recite. When you come here, the question is not what you want, it's how much of it you need. See, you got your ham, which is lean meat but can be a little dry, and you got your shoulder, which is greasier, but more tender and moist. And then there's the belly meat, which is probably your juiciest cut. Of course, there's always some nice bark here and there. Bark is barbecue terminology for the singed outer edges of the meat. And then you got your skin, which lends some nice salty crunch. Chop them all together, not too fine. Throw some seasoning on there and mix it in good. And that's it right there, whole hog barbecue. It is a long, laborious way to cook. The pitman will shovel a line of smoldering coals roughly around the perimeter of each hog. a bit like the chalk outline. It's a little silhouetting the body at a crime scene. He'll add more coals every half hour or so until he leaves for the evening at 6. One of the co-owners of the restaurant will have to stop back in around midnight to check if the pigs need any more heat on them. They'll put more coals at each end than in the middle to compensate for the fact that the different parts of the hog cook at different rates. That's just one of the challenges of whole hog cooking, they explain. Cooking just shoulders like they do over in Lexington now, that's a whole lot easier to control. He snorts the word shoulder derisively, as if cooking pork shoulders was like throwing frankfurters on the grill. Of course, that's not barbecue in our view. There was so much going on in this sandwich. It wasn't just all the different cuts of pork, which kept things interesting bite after bite, but also all that wood and time and tradition. This was the way barbecue had been prepared for generations here in eastern North Carolina. And having done my reading in barbecue history, I could appreciate what an accurate reflection of this place and its past the sandwich offered. If a sandwich can be said to have terroir, that quality of place that the French believe finds its way into the best wines and cheeses, this sandwich had it. A sense of place and history you could taste. The pitmen insisted that what was going on in their product did not in any way, shape, or form depend for its flavor or quality upon sauce, a word they pronounced with a slight sneer, suggesting that the use of barbecue sauce was at best a culinary crutch deserving of pity, and at worst a moral failing. So this was barbecue. Right away, I realized that I had never before tasted the real thing, and I was converted. This was easily one of the tastiest, most succulent meat dishes I had ever eaten, and certainly the most rewarding $2.75 I'd ever invested in a sandwich. Barbecue. My first bite made me realize, with a cringing pang, that as a northerner, I had already spent more than half my life as a serial abuser of that peculiar word. Which is to say, as a backyard blackener of steaks and chops over 2 hot fires, flames, with a pitiable dependence on sauce. Even before I finished my sandwich, I resolved to figure out how to make barbecue like this, to try to redeem that noble word at home.
All very well for the anthropologists and food critics, but here's the thing. People have to eat. You can talk all you want about nutritional values and the chemistry of cooking and the cultural history of food, but that isn't lunch. And by the way, I give you warning. Don't sit down to read Michael Pollan's book without a sandwich close at hand. There is no direct access to naked spiritual truth. Everything that we know and experience as human beings is mediated by our senses and by language, by the conceptual hardwiring of our organic brains. As the poet Mary Oliver, among other great mystics, has pointed out, the spirit has to get dressed in order to deal with us, has to take on some kind of form so that we can perceive. This is the whole notion of incarnation. You can't dispense with the transient forms of religion. They are the only path to reach its permanent wisdom. I wonder if our competitive culture hasn't led us astray here. Does our loyalty necessarily have to make fanatics of us? Can I say in all sincerity that beef ribs cooked in a gas oven and served with a tomato-based sauce may be tasty, but it ain't barbecue, without being required to beat up the cook who offers them? Can I put slaw on my pulled pork sandwich, recalling in that savory crunch the aunt who taught me to do it this way, without insulting your uncle who always baked a covered dish of beans in the embers of the pit? Can we cherish what makes us unique without assuming that it makes everyone else wrong? Can we be faithful to a tradition because it matters, because it connects us to something precious that transcends our individuality without becoming reactionary extremists? The pitmasters are totally sincere in their efforts to keep alive the traditions that they represent. It matters to them that their smoked offerings replicate as exactly as possible the process they inherited, so that their particular interpretation of authentic barbecue may not be lost. Yet when they say that some other version ain't barbecue, the claim is condescending but also good-natured. They are well aware that what they have in common, the history that they share, is far larger than the regional variations that comprise their boasts of authenticity. Indeed, the quest for real barbecue is what animates them collectively and exacts a mutual respect which underlies the rhetorical bragging contest that is itself part of the tradition. You do your best to make the most authentic barbecue you know, but at the end of the day, people are fed, and as they would say, it's all good. To me, it is this possibility of loyalty within openness that constitutes spiritual maturity in any faith tradition, including our own. What may be a little different for us is the part about legacy. We have not inherited our understanding of what constitutes authenticity. Ours is, for the most part, as former UUA President John Bjorns once put it, a chosen faith. Sort of like me arriving in Kansas City, having to pick my side. And I confess I have tended to lean toward Jack Stack, but I've had some great meals at the other places too. However, I was born into this religious tradition, and there are pieces of it, like the hymns that I grew up with and learned to draw sustenance from and to love, that I long to replicate for others because I know how delicious they can be. It's a tension that we live in, a creative tension, I think, between the willingness to move beyond what is outmoded and transient in the religion of the past and the need to identify with a particular heritage, to own something that owns us, that connects us, a faithfulness to which is more important than innovation. Barbecue is not just a particular way of cooking meat, or even the argument about a particular way of cooking meat. It is a tradition that has power and resonance because it is rooted in a people's struggles and celebrations and the deep ambiguities of how we are with each other. Once upon a time, barbecue signaled for a few brief hours the beloved community, the welcome table, the place where people came together in a setting that endorsed their shared humanity and temporarily set aside their painful dividedness. That memory and that ideal are surely worth preserving, worth getting the recipe exactly right and handing it down, a taste that the mouth remembers even when the conventional wisdom has forgotten. So, dearly beloved, let's eat. Let us gather with one another at the welcome table of this community, and let us strive always to open that table to all those who with us hunger and thirst for righteousness. And as we feast together, I challenge you to contemplate the question of what, if anything, in your life is precious enough to call you to faithfulness. What do you so cherish that you long to hand it on intact to those who follow us? Think about that and let's eat. But first, let's sing.
We're
Now we release this chalice flame, sending the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment out into the world. And these we also carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. May all who dwell together in this community of seeking souls discover an enduring truth that shall nurture our spirits and inspire our hearts and hands for the building of a more just and generous world. So be it.